Hi, I'm Stephen Page, and currently I am alone with Jake Hogan, and I've been told to not be alone with Jake Hogan.
Don't be alone with Jake Hogan.
Hi, welcome to Don't Be Alone with Jake Hogan. I am the proverbial Jake Hogan, and you are alone with me. It'll be all right. You'll be fine. I want to thank everybody who listens to the show. The show's been growing leaps and bounds, and I've been getting a lot of very good feedback. So thank you for being part of the Don't Be Alone with Jake Hogan viral moment. I'm just saying it's a viral moment. It's not a viral moment yet, but maybe it will be. Anyway, but thanks for those of you who listen and been participating. It's been great hearing from you. If you want to write me, it's dbawjk@gmail.com. And today we have a great show for you. I am one of those people who I listen to a lot of music. I listen to new music. I listen to old music. I have everybody has their sort of favorite songs marked off on their Spotify or whatever. I am constantly listening to. It's ridiculous now. It's like 30,000 songs that are my favorites. It's not a favorite anymore if it's one of 30,000. I have a lot of songs that I listen to. I really like music. Music moves me. I find people who make music and write music magical because I fancy myself a bit of a singer and a bit of a player, but when I really try to do it, I'm nothing compared to people who really do it. And it's fantastic. So we have a great musical guest on today. His name is Stephen Page. He is a great singer. He's a great songwriter. And he's a person I've worked with. I did a movie with him that we'll probably talk about called The Wrong Guy. And he's very, very talented and a nice guy. And he's always been there for things that I've asked him for that he has no reason to be nice to me. And yet he's nice to me anyway. So I'm grateful for a chance for you to meet him, to hear him. He'll be the first person to sing a song on our show. And I'm so excited about that. So without any further ado, let's wait a little further ado. Okay, now without any further ado, let's go meet Stephen Page.
Don't be alone with Jake Hogan.
Stephen Page, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I'm thrilled to have you. You're willing to play a song later, and that's fantastic. But one of the reasons I thought I could ask you to play is because I've seen your show. You perform online constantly, and you do it. I don't know how you do that.
Well, I would see people doing like Instagram Live and Facebook Live and stuff, and I bristled at that. I thought like the last thing that musicians do for pay is now free.
Right.
And then I saw a friend of mine, this guy Dan Mangan, who's a singer-songwriter from Vancouver. He has a company. Their job is to like hook up people who want to do house concerts with potential hosts for house concerts.
Right.
Very grassroots thing. And then of course when COVID hit, they pivoted and started selling tickets for Zoom concerts. So I watched one of his and thought, oh, this I could do.
Right.
Because it's on Zoom and you can actually see the audience if they turn their cameras on. So I did one, like sold tickets for $8 a pop and sold out, which people, I didn't know you could sell something out on the internet, but you can. There's enough room for 1,000 people.
Right.
And it was amazing. So I thought, I'll try it again. I've now done 121 of these things.
Right.
And a lot of the people are the same people every week.
Right.
And they, not only do I get to see them, but they see each other.
Right.
And they chat. And like I open the Zoom meeting up like an hour or two before the show starts. So they all catch up and they've watched their kids grow up over the last 4 years and whatever.
And they have signs with them and they're communicating with you with signs.
Yeah, and the chat on the side and all that stuff. And it's like, it gave me the bit of the courage to like, I've played every song I've ever written basically. And covers, I'm not a covers guy. And I've learned to do this.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, why aren't you a cover? Why weren't you a covers guy?
Because I only learned to play instruments. Like I started playing piano, took piano lessons like when I was 5, and my dad said to the piano teacher, he's going to take piano lessons, but he's probably not going to practice. Are you going to be okay with that? And because he just wasn't going to force me to practice. He was just going to force me to take the lessons. And if I, fell in love with it, then great. I didn't. And I'm really uncoordinated. And then guitar was the same thing. I'm not like two hands doing two different things, too much to think about. But I wanted to be able to accompany songs I was writing. Right. So that's all I learned to do was like figure out the chords to the songs I was writing. And then I joined, BareNakeded Ladies with a bunch of guys who were great players.
Right.
There was almost no need for me to
learn
to
all
play
that
it.
stuff. Well, it's interesting to me because it seems like you clearly have listened to pop music.
Yeah.
And have a huge variety and history of pop music in your head. So why wouldn't you try to learn those songs on the guitar, pianos, just to have that that's fun.
Yes.
For a kid, even just to play those songs.
Well, and I would do things like I would get the tablature, like from a guitar magazine,
Right.
for some song that I liked on the radio, and I'd like learn the one part, and then I'd try and sing over top of that, and it was just too much work.
Right.
So I could have just been a karaoke singer. It's like, 'cause that's up my alley.
Right. Sure.
But that's the thing about joining a band is then you can play those songs.
Right.
So like, when Ed and I started BareNakeded Ladies, we'd go, let's sing whatever Johnny Cash song or Janet Jackson song or Billy Bragg song. It didn't matter, like whatever
Right.
we liked.
Right. Were you singing a lot of Johnny Cash songs?
We did in our first few shows. We sang,
All right.
I think we sang a bunch of them actually.
All right.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I've obviously was a big fan of BareNakeded Ladies, and as that was just in the right band at the right moment in my life, and you and your buddies seem, your bandmates seem young and fun and smart and new music, and just like it hit all the buttons. It was just none of it was stupid music. It was all good music. It was all smart music, but also fun, and
Right.
also had a little whimsy to it. And I was just so impressed with you guys. And I think your story, and I don't know if any of this is true. It sounded like you put together the history was you put together your own album and nobody wanted it, but you put it out yourself and it flew off the shelves. Is that right?
Pretty well. I mean, we started the group as just a duo, myself and Ed Roberts, and then over the course of a bunch of years, we grew the band, and everything we did was we didn't take it seriously at the beginning. It's not a real band; it's a
Right.
joke band. Like Ed had a cover band that he was in that was his real band,
Right.
And they broke up. So the only reason we did our first gig was because the organizers, it was a fundraiser for their food bank. They called him and said, "We're counting on you guys to do this show," and he goes, "Oh yeah, but we're called BareNakeded Ladies now," and called me and said, "We're BareNakeded Ladies, right?" And we did this thing. And every time we did it, we loved it, but we kind of just pretended it wasn't for real. And but once we started getting response from audiences, and I guess just from ourselves as we wrote songs too, like really early on, one of the first songs we wrote was If I Had $1 Million.
Right.
And you're going to go, this is something special. Then you think everybody in the world's going to love it. So we sent the tape, we made tape on a 4-track cassette recorder and sent it off to all the record labels in Canada. And they all either ignored us or sent us rejection letters.
Right.
So we were going down to South by Southwest in 1990, and they would have a Canadian showcase there every year. So we applied to the people who ran the Canadian showcase, and they rejected us.
Okay.
So we said, okay, well, we'll see you there.
Right.
And we rented a minivan, strapped the double bass to the roof, and drove down to Austin, slept on somebody's floor. And busked. That's what we would do all the
Right.
time. Is we would just show up somewhere and busk.
Right.
We thought if people don't know about our gig, we'll stand in front of the gig all
Right.
day and busk. And that same kind of thing. We stood in front of the Canadian showcase and busked in Austin. And eventually, one of the bands, the headliners, couldn't make it. They couldn't get across the border.
Right.
So they ran out into the street and said, "Will you guys play?"
Oh,
So we ended up playing the showcase anyways, just out of the
that's
luck and arrogance of showing up.
But that's fantastic. But I mean, also, there's a weird hat in hand moment where they have to go like, we said no to you, we forced you outside, and here we have to beg you to come do our show.
A lot of our early story ends up kind of hinging on our revenge over the Canadian music industry.
Okay.
There's a sense of
Right.
like we always being underestimated.
My son, who wants to be a musician,
Who is a musician?
he wants to be a professional musician. He is a musician. He wants to be a professional musician. Is facing this world, a little daunted, figuring out like, well, how should I step forward in all this? And I, of course, tell him, I don't know. Well, I'm a TV writer. I don't know anything about no music business stuff. But he's figuring it out. He's trying to figure it out. And it's like but eventually it feels like the content business of music, of TV, of movies is going to have to figure out a way to consistently monetize it in order to exist. And I don't know exactly how, it's like making concerts at home, Zoom, figuring out your own ways to make it work is essential.
What I've kind of settled on recently, of course, I would love to be playing arenas and stuff. Like, who doesn't want to do that? But if you spend for me, especially at my age, it's like I'm not going to hit it big one day. It's like all I need is just one thing.
Right.
There could be some song that should take off on TikTok, but there's no way of you can't engineer that.
You do it naked.
That's true.
You can engineer it.
That's a good point.
I'm just saying.
That's a good point.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody wants to see this.
But they'd see it anyway, even in the can't look away tragedy of it. Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah.
I might have to do.
Think about it.
We have the cameras right here.
All I'm saying is, let me manage you. That's ultimately what I'm saying. It's very important that I manage you, and I think I can bring you that hit that you're looking for.
Well, I will take it, because I was going to say I'm pretty pleased with how I'm doing, but I'm not really. I'm just trying to be okay with it.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think most people I know are figuring a way to struggle through it. I mean, you have Trans-Canada Highwaymen, and you have things going on.
Lots of stuff.
So it's not it's not like you're at home trying to figure it out. You're doing stuff.
Right.
While you're figuring it out, I guess.
But it does require, in the same way that I'm not a big social media person. I kind of post stuff on Instagram like once a week. I'll dump too many posts at once, and then it gets lost in the algorithm. But actually engaging with fans in a way that I didn't before has made a huge difference. It means it takes time and investment of creating boundaries is a thing, and then but also being genuine in it and not making it like the phony meet and greet thing is one thing.
Yeah.
It works for bigger artists, but it wouldn't work for me.
The show, Don't Be Alone with Jake Hogan, ostensibly is about me working out my problems with a smart, interesting person. And so you're here, so you can be that smart, interesting person.
I will try.
And one of the things that was a very difficult time in my life was when I had a writing partner named Wally Wolodarski, high school buddy of mine. And at a certain point, we worked on the Tracy Ullman Show, worked on The Simpsons. We got this big deal at Universal to make our own shows. And then at the end of that, he said, I just hate what we're doing. I hate writing for TV. It's too hard. It's too mercurial. I always loved movies, and I want to do that exclusively, and I'm going to break off and do that on my own. And my reaction, of course, I love Wally, and I understand that my reaction was, no, don't do that. But at the same time, completely understandable that that's what he would want to do. But the thing that I didn't want to do was have to figure out how to start again on my own. You were partners with Ed, and you guys knew each other from school, right? Were you very good friends at first, or were you more just music partners and became friends?
At first, it's funny, I knew him in elementary school. He was a grade below me, and he kind of scared me. He seemed like a tough guy.
Sure.
And I was a really soft guy.
Sure.
And he'd walk around with his guitar, and he was kind of the rock kid. But then I remember seeing him play with his cover band at a battle of bands at my high school. And they did the rock stuff that I expected. And then they also did Talking Heads. And I thought, oh, this guy's got a broader sense of music, like Peter Gabriel or something. And when we were working together at a summer music camp that the Board of Education ran, he happened to have a copy of one of the cassettes I'd made with my previous band and my previous writing partner, Jeff Poundset, and he and I had written these ridiculous songs. Ed
when
walked
you say
up,
ridiculous, you mean what? Why, goofy songs, joke songs?
Yeah, jokey, or kind of on the edge of, again, kind of even though we weren't stoners, I think if you listen to it, you'd think we were stoners.
Okay, right.
We were just stoned on life.
All right.
And just eating KFC and making tapes and making each other laugh. And that kind of thing. And Ed knew this tape, so he walked up to me with his guitar singing one of these songs.
Oh, fantastic. Which
was very flattering. But then we started singing in harmony, and it was amazing. It was just, and we were, guarded in the 1980s, straight dudes didn't want to kind of admit that we were totally in love with each other. Right. Because he was so fun to be around. We just laughed all the time. And it was like you have this instant best friend. Where have you been my whole life? And we started writing songs together right away. And so we had a really close relationship. But as time went on, we stopped, like we didn't hang out anymore. Like we'd be on the road for 18 months straight.
Right.
So when we're home, we want to see everybody else but each other.
Right.
And had some different interests. But all the time that we worked like in the studio and on stage, anything that looked like we were close, we were absolutely that close.
Right.
Like I feel like every moment of those stage shows, we were as close as we appeared to look.
What led to the moment where you said, or they said, or you said together, it's time to try and break up and do something different?
It was a bunch of different stuff. So I had my first marriage had ended in 2007. And then in 2000,
I had bet that it would end in 2006. So I lost a bit of money.
Yeah.
Whatever.
If it had been, because you can't go over.
No, exactly. The over under. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I hung on for the extra
no,
year.
I appreciate it.
My kids appreciated me being around for the extra year. So that was kind of the first like beginning of me blowing up my life in a way, and just trying to find my way. And then got arrested for drug possession in 2008,
which is a right of every rock star.
Except not our band, because we had a very clean image, and it really wasn't part of our group or my life or anything else. I think for
Paul McCartney's a very filthy, evil guy, right?
That's right.
Like no, he's the cute one.
That's right. But it was at the time it just seemed to be like I remember the press coverage, especially in Canada.
Yeah.
Like they were really rough on me, like as if I had done something horribly violent or whatever else. Yeah. When this happened, I had gone back up to Canada. It happened in New York State. I went back up to my place in Canada, and I was in my house, and I heard this knock on the door, and I look out the window. I was up on the second floor. I looked out the window, and I see the news truck out in front of the house.
You don't want to see a news truck in front of your house.
No. And then a second news truck.
Oh.
And then a third, and they're knocking on the door, and I'm just not going to answer it. But I saw the news that night, and they're interviewing my neighbors. You didn't do like a
fake voice? Who is it?
He's not here today. No, he's on tour right now.
In Pico. All right, yeah.
But they're interviewing my neighbors.
Yes.
And like they're like, oh, he's a very nice man. Like as if I was a serial killer. But anyway, it was really stressful for the group. We ended up having to cancel a tour. We had a kids record out at that time. It was like bad timing on my part. Yeah. And we had to cancel a tour that we had in conjunction with Disney.
If I was your manager, I would plan out when you get arrested, and it would coincide with something that actually would be helpful.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
We weren't thinking ahead.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was thankfully pre-social media times.
Right.
But it was really stressful for the group. But what that meant, the biggest thing was that it meant that I couldn't cross the border without getting paroled in every time. Mm-hmm. So they'd go to do a gig. Mm-hmm. They'd fly from Toronto to Orlando to do a corporate gig or something like that. I'd have to drive from Toronto to Buffalo, cross at the Peace Bridge, get my fingerprints, my mugshot done every time.
Right.
And then I'd show up at the gig. So there was almost a year of us traveling separately. So that you just show up at the gig and you do the gig, but you don't feel like you're in the same band anymore.
Right.
And I didn't have any new songs. Mm-hmm. They were like, they wanted to put it all behind them.
Right.
And I was like, just give us some more time. Maybe we need to tour a bit. Right. And it just we weren't going to find common ground. But like you talk about, like, what do you do? Who are you without these people? Right.
You have spent years building a reputation, building a name, building a brand. And suddenly both professionally seen as the lead singer and songwriter for BareNakeded Ladies, but then also just personally, like what creatively, who am I?
It was the personal side for me that was the hardest. Yeah. Like I felt like I could tell people what I did for a living, or that my face and my voice would kind of like carry me through that. It was hard. That part was harder than I thought it was going to be. Yeah. I kind of thought I had more recognizability outside of the group than I did. But on the personal level, I'd been a BareNakeded Lady since I was 18.
Right.
Since Ed and I made up the idea of what BareNakeded Ladies is and came up with the name together. So no matter where I went, I was, hey, there's BareNakeded Ladies guy, was more often than even knowing my name. So to no longer be that, I still get it. It's like 15 years later, and people are like, hey, are you in BareNakeded Ladies?
Right.
And I'd be like, No, but I was.
Right.
But it's hard to even know how to respond to that.
Right.
You want to just talk about what you are now.
Sometimes I am. If you get the right records,
That's
I'm
right.
there. And if the other records, I'm not. So yeah. No, I mean, I think that's who you are. You are part of the BareNakeded Ladies, and you are also part of Stephen Page, and you're
Right.
also part of Trans-Canada Highwaymen and whatever else, other projects, you all of those things.
It took me time to figure that out, that I could be okay with all of
Right.
that. And honestly, like, as much as I've always been proud of what the achievements we did, and like a lot of the music, most of the music, almost all the music, but it was doing these live stream shows.
Yeah.
When I started going through the whole catalog, and I was doing shows where I do each album
I know.
in a row.
I loved them.
And songs that I never even sang before,
Yeah.
or I wasn't the lead singer on it, or ones we'd never played live before. It really like helped me to re-embrace my younger self
Right.
and those guys and what
Right.
we did together.
Did it re-energize your songwriting?
Yeah, I think it did. I think it made me unembarrassed to do
Right.
anything. Like, it reminded me of kind of the fearlessness we had at our best, and the kind of creative spark and the ability, like, you listen back to those records and think, well, there's like one song that is an outright comedy song followed by a heartbreaker,
Right.
and they sit together just fine.
Yeah.
And that's what made it mean something to people, was the fact that those records were that eclectic.
For sure.
I always find, I don't know if this is the case for you, but for me, my getting it wrong is often the thing that makes it right.
Right.
Like, like if I was, and it goes back to being not being a cover band person.
Right.
If I knew how to play the Beatles guitar part
Right.
properly from Ticket to Ride,
Right.
I would put it in a song. Like, there'd be so much pastiche that would be too correct, I
Right.
think. But when I get stuff wrong, because it's like in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, this is like what sounds like what Gilbert O'Sullivan would do, without actually going and checking the Gilbert
Right.
O'Sullivan record.
Right.
That's like when you come up with something original.
Sure. A lot of people today are trying to figure out what Gilbert O'Sullivan was doing. Very
great
few.
records.
Very
They're great
few.
records.
It's all fantastic. Claire, beautiful record. And, Alone Again Naturally was the first record I ever bought. But
It's pretty hard to beat.
there's a band called Silver Twin. That's very brand new band, young kids, British. I think they're in England. That's very Gilbert O'Sullivan-esque.
Like
and very poppy. Oh, they're very good. Silver Twin, if you're out there, I'm a big fan. I'm a huge pop music. I like pop music from any era. I've always said that I have the record collection of a 14-year-old girl of any time. So just whatever a 14-year-old girl would be listening to, that's what I'm listening to right now. That's as far as I go with the 14-year-old girl thing. But by the way, just so the authorities are out there, I'm not contacting 14-year-old girls. I'm just listening to the radio. Okay? That's all I'm saying.
That sounds reasonable.
Thank you.
And 14-year-old girls have good taste in music.
No, they don't.
Sure they do.
But they have a Catholic taste in music. So it's sort of it's all over the place, and so is mine. And I really like pop melodies and things, and sometimes pop rhythms now, because things are more rhythmic now than less melodic and more rhythmic. So
I find myself getting lost sometimes. Like I'm trying to stay in touch. I feel old.
yeah.
But then something like the Billie Eilish record comes out, and they go, "Oh, this is amazing. I get it."
Yeah, I mean, I was saying that What Was I Made For? When I first heard it, was like, oh, this is a really good song. I think it's, and I knew right away it's going to be giant hit and win the Academy Award.
Yeah.
I knew, because
it deserves it.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well written, very well produced, very fraught with emotion. It's fantastic, and I think that's really it's underrated how hard that is to do. That's one of the things. I think people think it's easy. They think, oh, I should write a song. People always think they should write a TV. I should write TV shows, right? I'm sure they come up to you. I always thought I'd be a songwriter and singer, but then I went into the car business. But I still think I could do it. It's like, go ahead, try. I think it's not so easy.
I encourage people to do it, because I think it can be useful for their lives. But as far as like making it in the business,
they might. No, everybody has a shot, but I just think it's a lot harder than people think.
Yes.
And of course there's luck and whimsy and everything, all that other stuff involved, but it's hard.
I think I've always looked at writing songs as being like almost like soundtracks to novels. Like
Right.
it's like you've written there's a fictional novel or an imaginary novel that doesn't exist somewhere that has all these ideas in it and characters, and you're singing this just the soundtrack to one section of it without giving all the backstory.
Right.
And so you have to distill all the feeling from that into a very short piece of music.
Yeah, it's hard. I have 4 songs that I picked out to sing, but you can sing anything you like. I would
Tell
love.
me your 4.
We're going to make history on "Don't Be Alone" with Jake Hogan by having a singer songwriter sing his songs. The 4 I picked out, I love so many songs. These are BareNakedLadies Ladies songs. "Good Boy,"
Yep.
which was the first time I heard it. I was like, oh, these guys are way deeper than I gave them credit for. From listening to fun.
Sure.
If I had $1 million, the good. Oh, okay. I'm getting Lennon McCartney vibes. Great. And then Jane, who I love. "It's All Been Done," as we talked about earlier. I just, as a writer, I just find it delicious and delightful. And maybe not a song that you want to sing solo. But and then "Call and Answer" was so I don't know.
I'm happy to do any of them.
So this is Stephen Page singing by request a song that I asked him to sing, and I can't believe he's actually singing it. It's "Good Boy." It's from how many years ago did you?
This would be 33 years old.
33 years old. Wow. And I feel like it's part of my youth as well, even though it's not, because I was like in my late 20s when I must have heard it. So, okay. So anyway, there's a "Good Boy."
All right, here we go.
When I was born, they looked at me and said, "What a good boy, what a smart boy, what a strong boy." And when you were born, they looked at you and said, "What a good girl, what a smart girl, what a pretty girl." We've got these chains hanging around heartaches. People wanna strangle us with them before we take our first breath. Afraid of change, afraid of staying the same. When temptation calls, we just look away. This name is the hair shirt I wear, and this hair shirt is woven from your brown hair. This song is the cross that I bear. Bear with me, bear with me, bear with me. Be with me tonight. I know that it isn't right, but be with me tonight. I go to school, I write exams. If I pass, if I fail, if I drop out, does anyone give a damn? And if they do, they'll soon forget, 'cause it won't take much for me to show them my life ain't over yet. I wake up scared, I wake up strange, I wake up wondering if anything in my life is ever gonna change. I wake up scared, I wake up strange, and everything around me stays the same. It's the hair shirt I wear, and this hair shirt is woven from your brown hair. This song is the cross that I bear. Bear with me, bear with me, bear with me. Be with me tonight. I know that it isn't right. Ooh. But be with me tonight. I couldn't tell you that I was wrong. Chickened out, grabbed a pen and a paper, sat down and I wrote this song. I couldn't tell you that you were right, so instead I looked in the mirror, watched TV, laid awake all night. Oh, we've got these chains hanging around our necks. People wanna strangle us with them before we take our first breath. Afraid of change, afraid of staying the same when temptation calls. This name is the hair shirt I wear, and this hair shirt is woven from your brown hair. This song is the cross that I bear. Bear with me, bear it with me, bear it with me, be with me tonight. And when I was born, they looked at me and said, what a good boy, what a smart boy, what a strong boy. And when you were born, they looked at you and said, what a good girl, what a smart girl, what a pretty girl, hey, yeah. Well, what a pretty girl, hey, yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, da, 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 da. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Pretty girl, hey, yeah, yeah, na, 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 na.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
So you have one of the great voices of all time. I mean, it's like, it's one of those things where like, you're a really talented songwriter, okay, musician, but the fact that you have that voice, did you know, like, okay, this is, I can sing no matter what I can do, no matter what happens, I can always sing.
I don't think I know I didn't think that as a kid. I loved to sing.
Yeah.
And, like I was never good enough to be like in the orchestra or anything else,
Right.
at any kind of instrument. But they had this choir, this all city choir that I joined, and I loved it. Like it was 100 kids singing together, like their voices together. It's like, to me, like that singing with other people thing is one of the greatest feelings. And so I loved to do it. But I don't think it was till even then I took it in university. I took some voice lessons and sang in the music department and got some solos and stuff. So I thought, okay, I must be doing something right. But I think it was several years into the band that I really was able to kind of figure out that I loved to do this thing, and then got positive feedback for it.
You have a voice, and I'm not telling you something you don't know, that powers through, that cuts over the top if you
Right.
wanted to. Like that is the power. That's one of the superpowers that you happen to have. And that's pretty fantastic. I don't know how you choose to modulate that, or when you blend your voice with everybody else's, because there's great harmonies in your songs as well. But it's one of those things where if you want to be heard, you'll be heard. So how do you choose when to?
Well, I mean, some of that comes from like talk about busking on the street and
Right.
stuff like that, just trying to get over the sound of the traffic. But also finding a vocal blend is like, that's just as rewarding.
Right.
We used to do, when BareNakeded Ladies were starting in the clubs, and there'd be four of us at that point in the group. We each had a vocal mic, and the house sound guy would be like, yeah, right, 4 vocals, whatever, and there's only one monitor mix, so
Right.
you're gonna have to fight it out. And we'd just be like, oh, put them all at even levels, we'll blend. And
Right.
you could see them kind of rolling their eyes, and then they go back to the soundboard, and we'd play a song, and they'd be like, they can blend.
Yeah.
Like that was like a point of pride for us
Yeah.
to be able to find that blend.
That's great.
And then a lead vocal can cut over top of that really easily. And I love, like, one of my favorite things to do is when I'm recording is to do the backup vocals.
Yeah.
Like that, creating those chords and clusters is really exciting feeling.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. So now you wrote that song when you were 20 something, like
20 probably.
20. So it's a pretty deep song for a 20-year-old. How did you come to it? Or how did it come to you?
I don't know particularly what it was that I was listening to. Like, I know there were a bunch of things, like, like that thing that's kind of, it's the weight, but it's also These Days by
Right.
Jackson Browne. So
Sure.
I knew I was already kind of like
Right.
trying to do something that was in my mind, like would fit.
Tonally that.
And then there's also like Tracy Chapman in
Sure.
there too. And that was really popular at that time.
Right.
And I loved that. But I don't know if I knew what I was writing about. The best songs, there's a classic Leonard Cohen quote where he said, if I knew where the good songs came from, I'd go there more often.
Right.
Like, we don't know where they are, and you kind of wait for these times. Some songs, like this one, Brian Wilson, others kind of like tumbled out in
Right.
a way, and they kind of tumble out almost fully formed. Maybe just the order of the verses is different. This one, I remember Ed kind of brought the idea for the bridge. Was the lyrics were different, but I didn't know how to structure songs then. And that's one of the things I love looking back at my teenage self, was I didn't know like that you weren't supposed to have two different middle eights in a row, and like just I look at the structure of that song and it's all over the place.
Yeah,
but it makes perfect sense.
It does. It feels right and it sounds right.
I remember not even knowing like what it was, and we did a show. Oh, we opened for Billy Bragg, and he invited us to open for him at his annual New Year's shows, the Hackney Empire in London. And he came backstage before one of the shows and said, it was the year that Gordon had come out. He said, "What a good boy, best song of '92," and then walked out of the room again. I was like, what? Like one of my favorite. What are you talking about? Yeah. But it feels like magic in a way. And now I look at it because it got. The folks at the record company felt like it had these undertones of, you know, at that point in the early 90s, a forbidden love. Was it about being gay, or was it? And so they ended up being used in some kind of there was like Out magazine compilations, and it was in a documentary about Stonewall and like all kinds of. And it was like I was just thrilled that people were finding some connection to it. Well, now. I had no idea about gender fluidity or non-binary, right? And I realized that's what the song is about, at least to me. Yeah. But I kind of hate saying that out loud because some people it means something totally different. Right.
Labeling it is hard.
I think that's the thing that I was really trying to get across, was the idea of what are gender norms and why do we try to live up to them?
Right. Right.
And why is that dictating who I'm with?
Right. I mean, when I first heard it, I wasn't thinking about fluidity either, but I was thinking about gender roles,
right,
and about what society expects of men and women, and sometimes it's difficult to live up to those standards, if you're just a person.
That's right.
And it's very heartfelt and very beautiful. And
I thought about the good intentions of my own parents, and I was thinking about when I have kids, what am I going to do to what language do I use that is somehow putting expectations on them that I didn't mean to put on them?
Sure. All right. Well, we have question time and other things to do before we go, but the man's got a guitar. He's holding it. So I'm going to do one more song, and then we'll do question time.
The girl works at the store, sweet Jane St. Clair, was dazzled by her smile while I shopped there. It wasn't long before I lived with her. I sang her songs while she dyed my hair. Jane divided, but I can't decide which side I'm on. Jane decided only cowards stay while traitors run. Jane. I'd bring her gold and frankincense and myrrh. She thought that I was just making fun of her. She made me feel I was 14 again. That's why she thinks it's cooler if we just stay friends. Jane doesn't think a man could ever be faithful. Jane isn't giving me a chance to be shameful. Jane, na, 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 na. Jane. I wrote a letter she should have gotten yesterday. Life could be better by being together, is what I cannot explain to Jane. girl works at the store, sweet Jane St. Clair. Still dazzled by her smile while I shoplift there. No promises as vague as heaven. I know Juliana next to my heaven. Jane, desired by the people at her school and work. Jane is tired because every man becomes a lovesick jerk. Jane, na, na, na. Jane, come on.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Why you could put the guitar away?
All right.
Why wouldn't somebody think it's a joke if you give them frankincense and myrrh? Of course they're going to think it's a joke. What a great song.
I wrote that with Stephen Duffy, who's my songwriting hero.
Yeah.
I mean, I met him. I bought his first solo album when I was 15, and it meant so much to me that I wrote him this fan letter telling him, like, you know, I had my first girlfriend and this was the soundtrack to that, and then she dumped me and this is the soundtrack to that. And he wrote me back. Like, this is 1985, pre-internet, where he actually had to, like, write it down. And he sent me some signed pictures and stuff. And so I just kept writing to him as a weirdo. Yeah. And he kept entertaining me. Like, I started making music. I'd send him tapes and he'd write critiques and send them back. And when I was 19, I went to Cambridge for like a summer session, and I'd written him saying, I'm going to Cambridge for the summer. Maybe we can meet up. Ha ha ha. Right. And he said, well, I'm rehearsing with my band. Why don't you give me a call when you get there and we'll see. And I called him from like a train station somewhere. And he said, well, come on out. And I went and spent like 4 days with him and his band while they rehearsed in this farmhouse in the countryside of England. And we've been best friends ever since.
How lovely.
And when we recorded that song, Jane was one of the first songs we wrote together. I put in the third verse, which was kind of a repeat of the first, except I said, instead of shop there, I said, I'll shoplift there. Yeah. And he said, how dare you put a joke in one of my songs?
It's beautiful. It's interesting, the power of songs. Some songs I don't analyze too much. I tend to analyze too many things too often. But that's one of the songs where I just think, okay, this is a love song. This is a love song. And it really purports to give her point of view in a beautiful way. And it's like, and you don't hear that often. It's always I, me. And it's like her. And I just think that's just magical.
Thank you.
Great job. I also like any song that uses the lyric jerk in the lyrics is fantastic. John Hyatt's "She Loves the Jerk" is one of my favorite songs of all time. So, you know, you're in very good company.
Thank you. Well, it's really, that's there as a way, as a sucker punch, because the obvious one is work and school.
Sure.
To rhyme with lovesick fool.
Right.
And I thought that was the cliche. So if I can flip work and school to school and work, then you have to say jerk.
Chef's kiss. Chef's kiss. All right. Well, now we have to go to what we'd like to call question time.
All right.
It's question time.
So this is from Lauren, who writes, ask him how collaboration and community has informed his artistic process, both with BNL and at the Art of Time Ensemble, etc.
Good question. I think that is the biggest thing, like collaboration. Like, that's what I've realized, and you were kind of leading there earlier too, is the idea of being a solo writer, solo artist.
Right.
Nothing's totally solo. Everything's a collaboration. It's just, you can jump around. You can choose to collaborate with whomever you collaborate, whenever. You know, this one most recent record I did is the most solo, but still I had somebody else mix it. You know, I still ran it past people, because it's got to be.
Who are your go-to people? Like, I want your ears on this.
Well, Craig Northey is kind of my number one. My wife, Christine, knows my music better than anybody else. She's also like, she knows when I can do better.
Right.
So I usually wait till it's perfectly buffed.
Right.
And then I can't change it.
Right.
Stephen Duffy's another person who'll give me feedback. My kids are all really musical and two of them are professional musicians as well, so they can give me some pretty unvarnished responses as well.
Patrick asks, when he rhymed fan of the with Canada in Canada Loves You Back, did he put his feet up and nod like a Bond villain at his evil brilliance?
So yeah, this song Canada Loves You Back, I was approached to write this tribute song for Ryan Reynolds. He was getting the Governor General's Arts Award, which I guess is like Canadian version of the Kennedy Center Honors. And I knew I had to write it quickly or I was going to second guess myself, because you have to do funny and poignant, because that's his wheelhouse. And how do you do that? And so yes, when there were rhymes like that, I was like, I think that's pretty good. That's pretty good. But the best part, I got notes back from the Governor General's Arts Award people. They're like, I had one line where I said, you're far more profane than either Schuster or Wayne. So Wayne and Schuster were, an old time Canadian comedy duo. And they were like, people aren't going to know what you're talking about. So I was like, that was a good one. Right. So I changed it to you're almost as juicy as Bruno Gerussi. Okay. Which to me, almost as juicy as Bruno Gerussi. Nothing like that feels so good. When there's something that sings great. Sure. That's what I'm always the most proud of. It's something that feels good in your mouth. Right. That's good. That's amazing. Although I do like the Wayne and Schuster bit. Pretty good. I'm sorry. I like. Holly writes, how did Gangster Girl come to be written? Did it take longer or shorter to write than a song that's unconnected with the film? Well, so Gangster Girl is a song that's in a movie that Dave Foley, Dave Higgins, and I wrote called The Wrong Guy. And I'm sure that, you do tell your side of it. How did it come to be from your side? So we got the call. Was it from you or was it from Dave Foley? Probably through Foley. I think through Foley. He may have given me your number because he didn't want to ask. Right. But but it may have come through Dave, and we asked if you do it, and I think you said something like, "Can we be in it?" Right. Yeah. And you're like, "Yes, of course. Yes, great." So we end up being these singing cops. Right. I remember we had to do it so quickly, though. You guys were already shooting when this came about. Correct. And you were in Toronto shooting it. We were here in LA doing something else, and we wrote the song at the gate in LAX. Yeah. Before we flew to Toronto to do this thing. So we wrote it like while we were sitting in the airport, and then flew to Toronto. I think we went into what was maybe McClear Place Studios there and sang it. Recorded it. And then like that night, I think acted out our little sequence. It was fantastic. It's quick. We're doing a screening of it this Wednesday, and you can't come, but unbelievable. It's so much fun, and fans of yours and of the group don't expect to see you, and then when they do go, it's a delightful surprise. I still get so many comments about it. People who are like, I can't believe you guys are in it, or questions about it. And it's a great movie. I love it. Thank you. I love it too. My kids love it. People still like it. It's good. So whatever. Well, and I've seen some memification of stuff. Like, so there's the clips now that are out there. Then it's like, hey, yep, that's a great one. That's a great one. We're in the zeitgeist. Paul Myers says, didn't have a question, but say hello for me. Well, hi, Paul. Hello from Paul Myers. One of my favorite people. Sure. Paul is a great musician, a great author. He writes books, and he's done great, insightful things about so many things. And he's also got an amazing podcast called the Record Store Day Podcast, which is great. He's a wealth of knowledge and a great guy. And a know-it-all. Yeah. Shut the fuck up, Paul. I know. Stop it, Paul. All right. Now this is time for Moment of Joy. A moment of joy. What brings you joy? I have no hobbies. Like, my hobby is music. I love music that much. And I'm like, even though I find it frustrating, heartbreaking, but singing with other people, or even just other people singing together. Yeah. People singing in unison even, like, brings me joy to no end. Mm-hmm. There are things about the combination of people's voices or instruments together that is magical for me. Who are you listening to right now that you like? Well, I'll tell you, this is the dumbest and it's the most ordinary. Right. It's nothing new. Okay. It's something everybody knows. Right. But there is something to me that is pure magic about Hey Jude. Yeah. I think this as a song, it's absolutely okay. It's like, that's why when somebody else does it, or when McCartney does it live, when McCartney does it live, you're bringing all your memories of it with you. So that's one thing. It's weighted that way. But when somebody does it somewhere else, it's like, it's even funny when people do the na-na-na.
Right.
It's a joke, a punchline.
Right.
But that recording, those, like, what happened in those 7 minutes in that studio, it's magic. And it's like, I don't know what I feel about God, but like God exists there.
Right.
And it's something to do with like the sound of the acoustic guitar and the piano and the ride cymbal all at once. And it's like, it fills me with absolute joy.
It's fascinating. Have you ever heard Giles Martin talk about listening to these tapes? He's George Martin.
Sure.
So he talks about it like reverently, as he should, but talks about it like it's like going into a time machine. You're going back and listening to these 27-year-olds or whatever they are, and they're young men. We've heard this song our whole lives, and this is the first time it's born. And when you hear that energy of how it was born and how they put it together, there's a real magic to it. There's a real special energy to it. Some of them are blasts of energy from when they're super young, and some of them are, you can hear a little bit of the tiredness and the melancholy and sort of the musicality and how they've grown. And Hey Jude is towards the end of that run, and I can understand you. I haven't listened to it as closely as you have, and I will again, but I find that those recordings of people in that era, in that time, are very special and have a whole life of their own. I wouldn't imagine to listen to somebody cover Hey Jude.
No,
so I don't know.
Like, it's because I think that's where we have to kind of differentiate it. The song itself is fine.
Yeah.
But something special happened there.
Right.
And, I have mixed feelings about the Giles Martin remixes because part of me likes to be able to hear things in a new context, but part of me is like, that vocal stack is wrong. Like, now that this part is too loud and this one's too quiet, and why mess with that?
I think he wasn't defending his mixes. I think he was just saying when he heard the raw tapes,
he
goes like, oh my gosh, that's something special.
It was a privilege.
Yeah, and I guess if any of us were to walk in there and say, okay, well, what would we do with this? We'd mess it up. Yeah. Because they're perfect as they are.
No, just listen to it.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the magic of the Beatles Rock Band video game.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not a video game person, but I'd watch, my wife would play it, and I'd watch it and go like, oh, they actually were able to separate out all the tracks, and now I can hear the bass part by itself. Right. It was like, opening up the Lost Ark.
Yes. Anytime I can go into somebody sort of playing with the individual tracks. Sometimes you hear Brian Wilson playing with the individual tracks of God Only Knows or any of the harmonies. Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah. But it doesn't take away from the song and the originality of it. Well, Stephen, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Jay.
I would say that this has been great and goodbye, but we're going to spend the night. We're going to show together.
I'm looking forward to it.
So I'm looking forward to it too. This is going to be very exciting. But thank you for being on Don't Be Alone with Jay Kogan. And I want to thank you for listening and being here with Don't Be Alone with Jay Kogan. Thank you for being here, and don't be alone. Try to spend some time with somebody in person next to them and connect with somebody. That's good too. All right. We'll see you next time.
Don't be alone.